Thank you for tuning into the Utmost Performance channel. I'm your host, Mario Ariave. I've got an interesting study that I'm going to start off with to give you guys. And the study went something like this. The researcher set out to find out the amount of time that it took for a musical composer to compose a worthwhile or worthy piece, I guess, a piece that people started noticing and paying attention to, and how long it took for them to do that from the moment that they were interested in music. And this researcher, he went through 500 different pieces of music written between, I believe, the end of the 1600s, 1690 something, and 1900, and he found 500 pieces that were considered master works, considered very good pieces of classical music. And out of those 500 pieces, he found that those 500 pieces were written by 76 composers. And so a lot, very few composers responsible for a lot of the master works in that particular time period. And he continued to dig further. And what he found was that in all but 3 of these cases, that the composer, it took them an average of 10 years to compose that first work that was considered a masterwork. So out of those 76 composers, 73 of them, it took 10 years or more. And he found that the only 3 exceptions to that rule were works that were composed in, that particular artist's 8th or 9th year of composing music. So, point number 1 that I want to make in this video, it's very, very simple if you haven't caught on to it already. 10 years for this particular study. Now, Malcolm Gladwell came on the heels of this study, and he came up with the 10,000 hour rule, which in our culture gets thrown around a lot, saying you need 10,000 hours of doing something before you actually master it. But what's the bottom line that I just simply want you to take away from this video is it takes a really long time. When I think about 10 years, that's a really long time to be working on your craft and to be simply working in the dark, working without any kind of notoriety, working without being applauded for whatever it is that you're doing. And a lot of times, maybe seemingly you're on your journey and you're feeling like maybe you're not getting anywhere. But with each passing day, as you get closer to, again, I'm going to use 10 years, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the same for everybody. As you get closer to that period of time where you will make your breakthrough, simply because you're being consistent to the process, it takes one day after the other to arrive at that. So I thought that study was absolutely fascinating. The fact that next time I listen to a classical piece of music in a store or in a movie or something, and I can think to myself and say, wow, that's a beautiful piece of music, but it probably took that artist about 10 years to get to the point where that piece of music was noticed by the people that were actually listening to it. But we really can't stop there because it does take a long time, but I think there's another principle that's tied to that. And for this, by the way, all of this information that I'm getting is taken from an article written by a guy who's a fantastic blogger. His name is James Clear, and I'm going to put the link to that post in the notes for this video so that you can access it and read it on your own. But that was the first part of the blog post. But then the second part of the blog post, very interesting. It's a story about maybe, I'm not into classical music maybe, but here you go, a guy named Kobe Bryant. So Kobe Bryant was selected to play for the United States at the 2012 Olympics. And in an article, there's this guy named Robert who was elected to work with Team USA on conditioning for those Summer Olympics. And there was a training camp that they were having before the Olympics that took place in Las Vegas. And Robert tells a story, and it's absolutely fascinating, once again, like the study previous. And what he says is he was sitting in his hotel room. They had just gotten to the hotel, or they had gotten to the hotel, and they were just kind of lounging out. And he said it was about 4:30 in the morning, and he was watching a movie. And then he said he started kind of dozing off to go to bed, and all of a sudden his phone rang, and it was Kobe Bryant on the other line. And he said, "I'm not interrupting anything, am I?" He said, "Absolutely not." He said, "I was wondering if you would be able to meet me down at the gym for some practice." And the trainer said, "Sure, no problem." He says it took him about 20 minutes to get ready. So he gets ready, he runs down there. It was still before 5 o'clock in the morning. He says he gets there and he says he looks over and it looked like Kobe Bryant had jumped into a pool. He was so sweaty. He had been working so hard already. And he says it was clearly before 5 o'clock in the morning. So he gets there. Kobe says, great, thanks, man. So they do some conditioning drills. He says they did that for a little bit over an hour, about an hour and 15 minutes. Then he says they run into the weight room. And they did some strength work, and they did strength work for about 45 minutes. And then Robert was dismissed. Kobe said, thanks so much for working with me. And Robert says, great, no problem. Robert returns to the hotel. He falls asleep. He had to be back at practice, official Team USA practice at 11 o'clock in the morning. So he rolls back to the gym, gets there. Players are kind of hanging out. Some of them are talking to the coaches. Some of them are talking to each other. And he looks over and sees Kobe. And he walks over to him and says, Kobe, that was a great morning session that you put in this morning. How did it end? How'd it go? And Kobe kind of, What do you mean? What are you talking about? And he says, well, what time did you wrap up this morning? And he says, I just finished. After you left, I've got this commitment to make 800 shots. And so I literally just wrapped up making my 800 shots. And now I'm here for the official practice. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Kobe Bryant. That's the guy that when I was teaching, one of the biggest arguments I would hear in the halls was, who's better, Jordan or Kobe or LeBron, right? Who's the best basketball player of all time? He is considered, he's in that conversation as being one of the best of all time. And here you are in 2012, by the way. He wasn't a spring chicken anymore. He was getting to the twilight of his career. And here you have a guy that still has this determination to be the best version of himself, doing these things that are just, it's mind-blowing. And so we do have 10 years, we do have 10,000 hours, whatever you want to call it. We have this principle that it does take a long time. But can I tell you something? You can't just be sitting there looking at your clock, letting the days pass by going, yep, been at it for a year. Yep, been at it for 2 years. Where's it at? You've got to have this other piece. You've got to have this Kobe Bryant mentality that you're going to be very deliberate about how you spend every single day and moment of those 10 years. So you can't just show up and clock in and clock out. You've got to have this thing that James Clear calls deliberate practice, where you're actually doing something to move that ball forward and get you closer to achieving whatever it is that you desire. So yeah, it's great to hear that people are grinding and people are hustling and people are working. But a lot of times we sensationalize that and we're quote unquote on the clock, but we're not really working hard. We're not really moving the ball forward. We're not really being deliberate in what it is that we do. You've got to couple both of those principles together. And then I want to end with this. I was looking for it in a scramble and I couldn't find it because I'm reading a lot of Stoicism these days and I don't remember if it was Marcus Aurelius or Epictetus. If somebody finds it, I would love for you to tell me, number one, what book it's in, and number two, where it's found, because I was scrambling around like a madman trying to find this. But one of the Stoics quoted saying, everybody, wants to raise their hand and say that they want to be an athlete in the Olympics. And this is back, in Roman times where it was like this great time to be an Olympian, to go to the games and compete in the games. And this Stoic, it was either Epictetus or Marcus Aurelius, says, but before you raise your hand, before you actually commit, before you actually tell others and hold yourself accountable to doing this, can you go down the list of things that you're going to have to endure? And he goes, working until you're tired and vomiting and being dehydrated and being hot and working in the winter months when it's cold. And he goes through all of these hardships that you're going to have to go through. But the last line of this quote is the best. And then he says, and do you understand that for all of that you did, only one athlete at the Olympics will win that ultimate prize? In other words, let's take it to Kobe in this story. He's putting up 800 shots. He's doing all this conditioning work, strength work, 4:30 in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning. And yet there was no guarantee that he was going to be successful. There was no guarantee that Team USA was going to win the gold medal. Taking it to his trade team with the Los Angeles Lakers, he has this work ethic, and there's no guarantee that the Los Angeles Lakers are going to win the NBA championship at the end of the season. There's no guarantee that the hard work is going to result in that prize that maybe you're seeking, that you're desiring. But you see, here's what successful people know, and I've said it several times in the videos that I've done, in the podcasts, and a lot of my content. it's not about the final outcome. It is about the process and the journey and the satisfaction that you get from investing in that. So we've got to couple it. We got a lot of time that we're going to have to devote to our craft, a lot of things we've got to work on. We've got to go to work every day. But at the same time, we've got to be smart. We've got to be intentional about how we go about doing that work. I hope that this encourages you guys. I hope that as you guys look to set goals for yourself and want to reach some of these achievements, that we don't get mystified and all bubbly and feel good about just raising our hands that we want to do something, but we actually understand that it's going to take a lot of hard work, that it's going to take a lot of time, and that we really do need to be very deliberate, and we really need to plan well as to how we're going to go about achieving those goals and getting to those desires so that we can be successful. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this video. If you like this video, I would recommend that you would subscribe to the channel. That way you don't miss any other videos that are coming out. You want to just go ahead and peruse and poke around and see some of the previous videos that I've done here on the YouTube channel. I think you would gain some great content there and that you would gain some value from them. In addition, I've got a podcast for those of you that, you can't watch videos, you drive into work or you run and exercise in the morning or you're walking the dog or whatever. You just plug your headphones in and listen to a podcast. I've got a podcast as well. You just need to go on iTunes and search A Champion's Mind and you will find that podcast. And I've got a lot of great content on there as well that I think you would benefit from. Lastly, I've got a website, utmostperformance.info, where you can find a lot of the content that I put up there, including some of the pictures and stuff that I put up on Instagram in that feed. And in addition, if you're wanting to contact me because maybe you're thinking to yourself, I'd like to do some one-on-one with this guy and have him help me with my mindset, or maybe you've got a team and a group of folks or a business that you'd like me to come out and speak to, then you would be able to grab some forms there and you would have some methods to be able to contact me and get at me that way. Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day. Last but certainly not least, I really do want to interact with the audience. So if you guys have any comments, if you have any thoughts or anything like that, for those of you whose wheels are already turning, maybe you're looking up that stoic quote that I asked you for, please feel free to do that. I would love to hear from you guys. Y'all take care. Have a great rest of your day.